Hey guys, Miss B here. Welcome to the first video. I'm really excited to make these videos for you guys and continue to be your teacher. So today we're going to be talking about Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird, and we're going to go through a summary of chapters 1 through 3. So if you haven't read those chapters yet, I would pause this video, read those 3 chapters, and then come back when you're done. So the first 3 chapters give us a lot of expository information about what's going on within the novel. So we know that this novel is in first person, so it's used, the narrator uses the word I to describe the story, so we know that the narrator is an active person in this story. We know that the setting is in Alabama, more specifically in Maycomb County, Alabama, so we get to learn a lot about what life is like in Maycomb County, Alabama, and kind of the norms that happen within that. It doesn't say explicitly within the first 3 chapters, but I will say that this book is set in 1933, so we get to learn a lot about what being from the South and living in Maycomb County may look like in 1933. So that's going to be an adventure, right? We also meet some characters. We meet Atticus Finch, who is the father of Jem and the narrator's name is Scout. Even though it's not specifically stated in the story, her name is Scout. Or specifically stated in the first 3 chapters. Her name is Scout. We know that Jem is 10. We know that Scout is 6 because we know they're 4 years apart from a moment within chapter 1. And Atticus is their father. We also meet Dill, who is just a neighborhood friend. He's 7. He's described as cute. He may be some type of relief in the story. We shall see. And then we also meet Calpurnia. Calpurnia works for the Finches. And she's also the only person of color that we meet within the first 3 chapters. We also meet Scout's teacher, Miss Caroline. It's obvious that she's a new teacher and that she is new to the area because she gets roasted for it. We also meet briefly two of Scout's classmates, one being a Cunningham and one being an Ewell, and those stories are told within chapter 2 and chapter 3. So let's move on. So chapter 1, we kind of learn where they live. We learned that Jem and Scout's mother passed away when Scout was 2 and Jem was 6, and Scout doesn't really miss her, but Jem does, and we see in that moment that Jem likes to keep to himself, and Scout's very blunt. We also meet Dill in that part, and they become friends, but they also describe Boo Radley, okay? So Boo Radley is similarly described to as like Gatsby. So Gatsby described as mysterious, and because he's mysterious, he's scary, right? Same thing with Boo, is his presence and his existence are mysterious, and so all of these scary things form from that. And the Radleys don't really conform to the social norms that have been happening in chapter 1. So I'm going to go to page 11 and read a little moment real quick to just to solidify what I'm saying. So on page 11, and it's about this far down the page, it starts with the misery. It says, "The misery of that house began many years before Jem and I were born. The Radleys, welcome anywhere in town, kept to themselves. A prediction, I cannot say this word, predilection, unforgivable in Maycomb. They did not go to church, Maycomb's principal recreation, but worshipped at home." And then farther down on the page, it describes that the Radleys keep their doors and their shutters shut. And it says, "The shutters and doors of the Radley house were closed on Sundays, another thing alien to Maycomb's ways. Closed doors meant illness and cold weather only. Of all days, Sunday was the day for formal afternoon visiting. Ladies wore corsets, men wore coats, children wore shoes, but to climb the Radley front doorstep and call, 'Hey!' on a Sunday afternoon was something their neighbors never did. The Radley house had no screen doors." So basically what this is saying is the Radleys do not conform to this idea of having to be kind and personable to others. They keep to themselves. They want to deal with the commiseration that happens within their neighborhood, and they don't go to church, which is a huge problem. It describes church as a principal recreation of Maycomb, which tells to me, and maybe it's different for you, but it tells to me that religion and Christianity and the gathering of church is really important to Maycomb's society. And these are kind of describing when they talk about Sunday afternoons and how and how they all meet on Sunday afternoons. It describes the clothing that they wear, and that tells to me the social norms that are expected of you as a Maycomb resident. So keep social norms and like the Southern culture and Southern heritage in mind. I think that there's quite a few little connotative parts within the first chapter that kind of tell us that like being from the South is going to be an important part of this story. All right, moving forward to chapter 2, Scout goes to school, and she's kind of snarky at school. So we're gonna go dive deeper into that. So within this chapter, Miss Caroline, her teacher, scolds her almost for reading with her father, and saying like your father's teaching you at school or at home when you should be learning at school. And that idea in Scout's 6-year-old brain is kind of like rude, right? That's rude of you to say that my father shouldn't be reading to me at home, or nor can I learn from home. But she accepts it because she's 6. But there's an important part in here that I think I kind of want to discuss, so I'm going to read it to you. It's on page 23, and it starts, I mumbled that I was sorry and retired, meditating upon my crime. I never deliberately learned to read, but somehow I had been wallowing illicitly in the daily papers. In the long hours of church, was it when I learned? I could not remember not being able to read hymns. Now that I was compelled to think about it, reading was something that just came to me. As learning to fasten the seat of my union suit without looking around, or achieving 2 bows from a snarl of shoelaces. I could never remember when the lines above Atticus's moving fingers separated into words, but I had stared at them all of the evenings in my memory. Listening to the news of the day, bills to be enacted into laws, the diary of Lorenzo Dow, anything Atticus happened to be reading when I crawled into his lap every night, until I feared I would lose it. I never loved to read. One does not love breathing. So she's saying in this moment, I don't remember when I learned how to read, but it's just innate in me, right? Reading is kind of like breathing to her. And I wonder if this idea of growing up in an environment where something feels innate may sway your perspective, or make you to believe in ideologies that may be full of prejudice or bigotry, but but reading was taught to her, and I wonder what else can be taught to her. I know that's like, okay, Miss B, but trust me, I think that that's an important part, so I just wanted to mark it. And then later we meet one of the kids who's not eating lunch, and he's a Cunningham, and the teacher's like, why aren't you eating lunch? And he's like, I'm not going to take your lunch. And so in this, we're also learning about like the Southern pride that comes with these families, and all of his classmates knew like why he wasn't eating lunch. He wasn't eating lunch because he came from a poor household, and he wasn't eating lunch because they don't take handouts. So this idea of like fend for yourself may be a part of Southern culture. We don't know. I don't want to make that assertion, but that's kind of what I was thinking. All right, and then moving on to chapter 3. In this, we're still back in Scout's classroom, but we're talking about another student. And in this, we meet Burris Ewell, who comes to school the first day of class, gets kicked out for being gross, and then never comes back. We find out the Ewell father sends his kids to school for one day, and then they come home and work with him, specifically so he doesn't get arrested for truancy. So that was an interesting part. And again, Miss Caroline gets a rude awakening about being new to the area and not knowing that the Ewells did that, right? And so she sends Burris out, and then she's like, wait, no, stay, and then she sends him out again because Burris was rude. So that was what happened there. And then Scout goes home, and she tells her father she wants to drop out of school because she wants to continue to read with him. And Atticus has a very interesting and telling response. So on page 39, we go to the bottom of the page, and it says, first of all, and this is Atticus talking to Scout, because Scout is concerned that if she continues to read with him or sit with him while he reads, she will be she will continue to get in trouble at school. And she really cherishes her time at school, and she really cherishes their time at home with her father and their time of reading together. And Atticus says something that I think is very telling. He says, first of all, he said, if you can learn a simple trick, Scout, you'll get along a lot better with all kinds of folks. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view. So what he's saying here is you're not taking into account that Miss Caroline has her own point of view and that she wants to be the person to teach you. But I think he's also, that's like an ideal that he has, is like you can never judge a person unless you look from their point of view. I think that's an important thing to remember and kind of mark as you're reading throughout the rest of the novel. And the rest of the chapter is kind of just talking about the differing families, like how the Ewells are different than the Finches, and then at the end, Atticus puts them to bed, and Scout thinks of their ideas of what happened within their conversation, and she says Atticus was right. Atticus said if I paid no attention to him, Jem would come down. So in this chapter, we kind of learn about the relationship between Scout and her father and how she cherishes that and really cherishes his ideals. So those are the chapter 1 through 3. We learn a lot about maybe this idea of Southern culture. We learn a little bit about who the characters are, and it's an exciting introduction to what we're going to read more of. So I have 4 essential questions that we're going to go through real quick. Just keep these in mind as you're reading throughout the rest of the novels. So the first one, reference to the quote on page 39. What perspective can we gain about Atticus? So this is the one where he says, oh boy, I need that to focus. What perspective can we learn about Atticus? So this is like, this is the quote that he says you have to look from people's point of view before you judge them. So what do we learn about Atticus in that moment? Also, what do we learn about his ideals? So what are some of Atticus's ideals that we can gather from these first 3 chapters? Secondly, make notice to the way that Scout describes Miss Caroline and Calpurnia. So she describes Miss Caroline and Calpurnia very differently than she describes Jem and her father or Dill. So keep those in mind, okay? And it says, what do we think of that? What do we think of the way that she describes Calpurnia, the only person of color in the story? What do we think of the way that she describes Miss Caroline, a person who did not grow up in Maycomb? Let's keep those in mind. Third, from these characters, what do you think being from the South means? Or from these chapters, what do you think of being from the South means? I'll write these in the description as well because my handwriting's not awesome and it's kind of glaring. What do you think being from the South means? So what are some of the social norms that we talked about within this chapter? And then secondly, what do you think it means to be from Maycomb? Is that different than Southern? Is there different, like what's differing there? Okay. And then lastly, who is Boo Radley? I think we're going to be asking that question for a while. But what do we think about Boo Radley? Do you think it's true? Do you think it's not true? Do you think that he is scary? Do you think he might not be scary? How do you think he might play a role? How do you think the Radleys might play a role similar to like the Cunninghams or the Ewells? Maybe he's only in the first 3 chapters. We'll see. But anyway, there's a lot to keep in mind with that. So again, look through your, make sure to look at your plan books. Make sure to keep on track with your reading guide and fill out that study guide. I plan on making these a lot shorter than I made this one, probably 10 minutes tops for all 3 chapters, and it's just to help you. So anyway, I look forward to talking to you guys in the future. Again, email if you have any questions or concerns or any of that good stuff. But anyway, thank you so much. Have a good day, guys. Happy reading.